Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, subcommittee, I should say. First of all, I just want to echo, without repeating everything that Delegates Plum and Lopez and Kriesik said. I think they're right on the mark, and I definitely support them in their efforts. A few more facts I want to give out. This is from the Department of Labor. 600 economists, including 7 Nobel Prize winners, have said the weight of evidence now shows that increases in the minimum wage have had little or no negative effect on the employment of minimum wage workers, even during times of weakness in the labor market. And of course, our labor market is improving. Research also shows it has a stimulative effect on the economy. When you pay workers more, they spend more. A lot of them need to pay the rent, need to pay for groceries, and now they can afford to pay for kids' toys at Christmas that they otherwise couldn't afford to pay. So it actually increases the economy. I was actually very moved this morning to hear Delegate Will Moorfield talk about the situation in Southwest Virginia with a woman who could not afford to pay her groceries. And I remember thinking, if only she had a decent minimum wage, she could work full-time and not live in poverty. And I would hope that he would support this bill. Look, it prevents people from going on welfare. A lot of complaints by conservatives that they don't want people going on welfare. This is a way, without the Commonwealth paying a penny, to make sure people are fairly compensated for their wages. And I echo Delegate Kriesik, who says no one who works hard at a full-time job should have to live in poverty. We should also note that minimum wage is much, much less than it was in the past. In Ronald Reagan's time, the minimum wage and real wages would be more than $8 an hour. In the 1960s, it would be over $11 an hour. What my bill does is it allows local governments to decide what the minimum wage should be in their localities up to $10 an hour. It doesn't even go back to the way it was in the 1960s. I think it's a very modest measure. And I should note that my locality, the city of Alexandria, supports the legislation. I have a letter here from the mayor. I suspect you'll be hearing from Alexandria. Basically, this is something that I think local governments can and should do. Delegate Villanueva, you talked about, your neck of the woods. Your neck of the woods is different from my neck of the woods. I would very much like each neck of the woods to decide their own local minimum wage. I'll just close by quoting Speaker Paul Ryan, certainly a conservative icon. He said, quote, "Government closest to the people governs best." And he opposes having big government crowd out civil society. If you vote down my legislation, what you're saying in fact is you would rather Washington choose the minimum wage rather than the localities in which you live. There is no reason why Alexandria can't have a different minimum wage from anywhere else in the Commonwealth. And the people elected in local government are closest to the people. This is supposed to be a conservative principle, and I would hope you would follow that principle today. Finally, I would note on the question of tipped wages, I've talked with waiters and waitresses in my district, and even in Alexandria, there are a number of workers that are only getting $2.13 an hour in tipped wages. Lastly, it sharply reduces employee turnover. Academic studies show if people get a decent wage, if not, they have to keep training people. And a study of 3 out of 5 small business owners, you can find this at smallbusinessmajority.org, 3 out of 5 small business owners supported a gradual increase in the minimum wage to $12 an hour, which is more than even the maximum that my bill would allow. I think this is a modest measure. We should remember that the vast majority of people who earn the minimum wage are not teenagers. 89% are over the age of 20. For those that would increase up to $10 an hour, it stimulates the economy, it saves taxpayer money. It is a modest measure that I hope that this subcommittee would seriously consider. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, now we're, is there any questions right at the moment? We're going to hear from those people that are here in support of the bill. And the clock is ticking, so if somebody wants to come forward and say your name, please.
Good afternoon, my name is Laura Clark, and I'm a home care provider. I make $9.02 an hour. Raising the minimum wage to 15 would afford me to be able to afford health insurance. It would afford me to help my daughter to go to college and become a college graduate. Without that, I mean, it's hard to make ends meet from day to day. My mother is 82 years old, she has dementia, and she's on oxygen. So she requires a lot of attention, but I don't get those kind of hours. So I get like 30, 40 hours, maybe a week. I can't make ends meet on that kind of money. So I'm asking No, I take that back. I'm begging that you support the $15 an hour minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, my name is Charles Carter. I'm here to speak for my sister-in-laws. And the reason I'm speaking for her, after 29 years on her job closed moving overseas, where she had to go to school to become an assistant to a nurse. She worked for the state of Virginia at a facility in Birchville, Virginia, where she makes $7.25 an hour. Well, this lady should have retired 2 years ago. She cannot afford to retire. She has to work so that she can afford to feed herself. Because, as I said, her job closed and moved overseas after she had been there for 29 years. I'm asking y'all to do the right thing, which is to raise minimum wage so people can live. We're not asking any more than you would ask for your own self or your family. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm asking for my family. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Anna. I'm living in Arlington, Virginia. Speaking in sorry.
I'm interested.
Okay. Vengo a pedirles el aumento al salario mínimo a $15 la hora, por favor.
I'm here to ask for $15 minimum wage.
Yo soy madre soltera y a veces tengo mucha carencia. A veces decido si la medicina o la comida.
I'm a single mother and sometimes I have to decide because of my wage between medicine or food.
Tengo que trabajar full time y part time para pagar mis deudas.
I have to work both full-time and part-time to pay for my needs.
Tengo una hija estudiando en la universidad. Hay veces que me dice, mami, ella está en Nueva York, y hay veces que me dice, mami, yo quiero ir, pero no tengo para pagar el pasaje que ella venga.
I have a daughter that's studying in university. She's studying in New York. Sometimes she says, I want to go visit you, but I don't know if I have enough for the bus fare.
Y por eso le tengo que pedir el aumento al salario mínimo a $15 la hora,
And that's why I came to ask for you
para medio pagar mis biles.
to pay for my bills.
Así como yo que soy madre soltera, así vemos muchas personas que tenemos necesidad de trabajar 2 trabajos para cumplir nuestras necesidades.
As a single mother, there's also many other people like me who have to work both more than one job to pay for our necessities.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Yolanda Ross, and Mrs. Yolanda Ross. I'm a home care worker for our son, who we affectionately call Prince Dorian Ross. I've been home taking care of him about maybe 10 years, but I've been a home care worker for 6 years. And he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, when he was 8 years old. He's now, praise God, 24 years old. I worked at the food bank one time, not too long, it's been years ago now. And I remember we would serve who we call the working poor. These were people who were working every day, but yet they needed assistance because they did not have enough to meet their needs. They had to make the decisions of what bills to pay or who to pay or whether they were going to get food or not. Some people had to make the decision of where they would live. And I'm so thankful that I do have a husband, but it has been stressful, and I never planned to be in this situation. That's why when I was employed, I went back to school to get my college degree because I never planned on being at home. But due to our son's condition, we thought it was best for me to come home and take care of him. And plus, I was always being called home for this or that. But what I want to say is, $15 an hour or $10 an hour, it would make raising the minimum wage would make a big difference in retirement. It could have made a big difference when our oldest son attended VCU. If it was not for our family members pitching in to help us send him to college so that it would be better for him and the next generation, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So 15, and I'm not a teenager, as some people say that it's affecting teenagers. I'm getting up there in age. And we also have to plan for, my retirement, which we're doing out of pocket. So I definitely agree that, and I know for a fact. Another thing is, when you let people see that you value what they do, you can get a better result if they know that what I have to do is valued. And it's easy sometimes to make an assumption that a certain group of people don't deserve this because you never had to do it. You never had to listen and maybe make a life-altering situation based upon your family members' health or anything. So I just want to share that with you all, and I pray it will really touch your hearts and move you to action, to make a decision before something comes where you have to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Burton, and I do not make minimum wage. I am standing here as a VCU graduate and post-baccalaureate certificate holder, but I'm standing up for people that do make minimum wage. Comedian Chris Rock said once in a Saturday Night Live interview, he said, you know what that means when someone pays you minimum wage? That means that they would pay you less, but the law says they can't. That's a joke, but it's not a joke. There are so many people out here, they say, go back to school, they say, oh, he's a felon, they say, oh, nobody working at McDonald's deserves $12, $15 an hour. But the fact of the matter is that those that are making minimum wage are living at the poverty lines. Those that are making minimum wage typically have more children. Those that are making minimum wage, they use up the earned income tax credit. They use up the food stamp subsidies. We're subsidizing corporations who are underpaying employees who have to come and be subsidized themselves. It's a never-ending circle. We need to raise the minimum wage.
I don't feel no waste time.
And we have 2 minutes left, just to let you know.
Ma'am, I just wanted to say I don't feel no waste time. My name is Karen Fountain, and I'm a caregiver for my dad. Presently, as I stand here, 8 days ago, my dad had a heart attack and he's still in the hospital. He constantly has seizures, and we don't know why. The doctors have not come up with the diagnosis why he does. But with that, I had to take the time out to come and to express that we need to raise the minimum wage to $15. 10 days out of work, 10 days I get no pay. But being that it's my dad, I'll be all right. But I don't want it to be that way. My mom is another caregiver. Her and I work with my dad. My dad is bedridden. He's had a stroke. They say his brain is deteriorating right now. And I've come to ask you to raise the minimum wage because my mom is 81, my dad is 82. And there comes a time when us as children have to take care of our parents. I want to be able to take care of them. If they need food, if they need little things just in the house, just gas in their car, it's time that I take care of them. But if we don't raise the minimum wage and still stay at $7.25, how are you going to do that? I shouldn't have to even struggle. No, nobody should have to struggle from knowing how to go from which bill I'm going to pay today. Dominion power, water, or gas. If you've never been in this situation, then you would not understand. I was not born with a golden spoon in my mouth. I have 2 children, raised up in the projects, had to work 3 jobs, wore the same pair of shoes for a whole year. But did that matter? No, because I had to do what I had to do. Now this is the time that we don't have to, I don't have to, my colleagues don't have to make a decision to do that. If you would walk a day, no, 3 days in our shoes, walk your life in our shoes and see what we have to go through. It's no way that you can take a check and make $7.25 for 10 days, 40 hours a week,
and think that that was stretched. Something has to be lacking. So I just come today to ask you to please raise the minimum wage. And we don't feel no ways tired because we come too far, and I don't believe that God has brought us this far to leave us.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna hear from those that are in opposition to the bill.
Chair, would the groups that represent organizations that needs to identify their organizations?
If I will just ask people to stand, if there's anyone else that didn't get to speak that's here in support of the bill. I know there's lots of organizations that support this, but we've already gone 12 minutes. I really need to keep some time constraints. How many do you have?
Well, I was only going to ask just for say the name of the organization.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
and I believe it's just 4 people.
Okay.
Say your name first.
Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference with support for raising the minimum wage.
Bernie Caton with City of Alexandria. We support raising the minimum wage, and I want to say one thing in support of Delegate Levine's bill. In Northern Virginia, the minimum wage has much less buying power than the rest of the state. A person in Martinsville who's making the minimum wage makes about $15,000 a year. If he moves to Northern Virginia, he'd need $25,000 for the same buying power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nina Wiggins with the Virginia City Engagement Tables Economic Work Group and the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We support the bills.
Doris Cross, Vice President of the Virginia AFL-CIO. We support the bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Ms. Chairwoman and members of the committee, Nicole Riley with the National Federation of Independent Business, representing 6,000 small business owners. We oppose the minimum wage mostly because it disproportionately hits small business owners who aren't able to absorb the costs that occur when you have a minimum wage increase. For many of our members, they most likely offer more than minimum wage, but certainly when you increase it dramatically to such a degree as $15, it's very, very difficult for them to absorb that. And also, I want to point out just a couple key findings from our recent November 2015 University of New Hampshire survey that was conducted on behalf of the Employment Policies Institute regarding a federal minimum wage. And this is where they actually surveyed a number of economists from all different persuasions, politically, academically, and such. And the key findings, nearly 3/4 of those that were surveyed opposed a federal minimum wage of $15. The majority of the surveyed economists believe that a $15 minimum wage would have negative effects on youth employment. 83% of them said that. 52% of them said it would decrease adult employment levels, and 76% said it would negatively impact the number of jobs available. When the economists were asked what effect a $15 minimum wage would have on small businesses with fewer than 50 employees, nearly 7 out of 10 said that it would make it harder for them to stay in business. And so it's for those reasons that we oppose. And at this time, I'd like to introduce actually a small business owner who owns a restaurant in Williamsburg, and he's going to come and just share a little bit about how it would impact him.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for opportunity to speak. I think that there are 2 issues with this minimum wage. The number one thing is, I think people deserve to make more. Everybody deserves to make more money, okay? In my particular field, all employees make more, much more than minimum wage. If you want to retain a good group or a good person work for you with experience, you got to pay him $14 to $15 an hour already. But, you know, $7.25 maybe it's too little. They should help these people whatever needs to be done. But increase of $15 minimum wage, the number one problem is going to create is simple this. And if everybody make a $15 an hour minimum wage, anybody can start in the workforce to retain a good employee. If I can go and get a job and not have to work hard and make $15 an hour, why I need to go kill myself in the kitchen, work so hard for $15 an hour? I'm going to get an easy job as possible. Now, to retain a good employee, I need to pay $30 an hour. $25 an hour. I need to be much higher than, like, we already are at $7, $8 an hour over minimum wage already. So the question is, If people should make more, absolutely. Are you bound to that? Because if you want to retain a good employee, the bottom is going to fall. We got the Obamacare. I talk from my industry. Obamacare is a total disaster. I hope somebody knows what all the details. It's not just about Obamacare. We heard that. It's the details of Obamacare. I want many of you to know that. What kind of impact is in the business? We need to collect the money for the insurance. We give insurance to the people and they cover nothing. $6,500 deductible a year. That's the normal, the little insurance like the silver plan. It's so complicated in this one business. So I am for an increase in minimum wage, but a fair increase in minimum wage. Not a go of 15, and then now you've got to decide that, okay, 15 employee less is gonna pay, have to follow the rules. 20 employee less is gonna follow the rules. It should be across the board, equal for everybody. You shouldn't be a business penalized because you got an employee. Not a business, you have a benefit because you got a few employees. It should be across the board. The law is equal for everybody, right? So that's what I'm expecting, to come up with a good plan, because it's very serious to bring it to $15 an hour. And that's the case for the minimum wage. The tip employee, the tip wage employee, I think is the number one, the people got more raise than anybody else in the restaurant business is the wages. First of all, as you remember, in 1980, it was an 8 to 10% tip, 10%, 8% tip. Now we give it a tip, it went to 12 to 15%. Now some customers leave 15, 20% tip. The way to get automatically increase every year. Are you increase the menu? The way to get increased. Automatically, you don't have to do anything. Because we gotta increase the price to pay for all this new law we have. So doing that, and then give increase to our employee every year, because the bills increase, so we gotta give a little increase to keep the employee working. So the way to make already a lot of benefit in compared with other employees, because even if it's 213, it's not ridiculous, it's like a resort amount. But now, if you increase your menu 10%, the waiter get a 10% on top of that. So it's 2.8%, 2.13. It's pretty much higher. So make it $5 and top the 20% demand. And on top of that, you have a credit card fee. It's 3.5, American Express. It's 2.5 and 2.5 for Visa. We don't take the money out of the waiter tips. We give it the full amount, pay the tax, that's it. So I think before this bill passed, you should really look into the numbers, not just the number come out from anywhere. It's easy to come up with the numbers here, numbers there. Spend that day in the restaurant, see how they work. And it's not fair to put everything to the public. The public is got to pay the example, the restaurant owner, the business is got to pay for everybody problem. If somebody have a person.
I need to wrap it up. I've got several people. Thank you for coming.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Ryan Dunn with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. I stand before you in opposition to an increase to the minimum wage. Virginia's economy flat out is struggling. 48 of 50 states is where we rank in our economic growth last year. Now is really not the time to be having this conversation, as we know this will put a strain on job creation. For many businesses, payroll is the single biggest line item on their books. Any increase would send ripple effects throughout the economy. Nearly every American and every business will agree that there are too many Americans living at or near the poverty line, and we should strive to alleviate these burdens and hardships. However, raising the minimum wage is not an approach that lends itself to solving this problem. It only makes new ones. One of those problems is job loss. The Congressional Budget Office shows that 500,000 jobs might be lost if the minimum wage was raised to $10.10. In Virginia, that estimates to anywhere between 10 and 31,000 possible job losses coming. Makes it harder to find work. Has a barrier to entry. It makes it harder for people to find that first initial job in order to move up. There's also, it's not a silver bullet for poverty. The Congressional Budget Office also looked and studied notes that many low-wage workers are not members of low-income families. estimating that less than 20% of workers who would see a wage increase to $10.10 actually live in a household below the federal poverty line. Charge higher prices. That's the outcome that will come to a lot of the businesses that are forced to pay more for their largest line item. Virginia must support initiatives that encourage job creation, entrepreneurship, job training, increased earning power rather than across the board mandates on minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you. This side's running out of time, so you're going to have to identify yourself or talk at great speeds.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. Kristen Scales with the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging and Travel Association. I'll keep these comments succinct, but I think it is important to note exactly how a tipped credit is calculated. The federal minimum wage is a federal mandate, and even though they are only applying $2.13 to that minimum wage, that employee needs to earn a minimum of $7.25 in their tips for that employer to be able to take that tip credit. So never could they fall below that $7.25 minimum wage without the employer having to make up the difference through a cash wage. It is important to note that servers are often the highest paid within the restaurant industry, averaging, I think there was a question from Delegate, to be $16 to $22 an hour across the national average. Thank you.
Yeah, it's 6 hours a week.
Chairwoman, members of the committee, Jody Roth on behalf of Virginia Retail Federation. I would just like to echo the comments of all the colleagues that just previously spoke. I would also like to bring to your attention the local option would cause more burden and regulatory burdens on our members, our franchise members particularly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Brendan Shaw on behalf of the Prince William Chamber of Commerce, speaking today in opposition of the bill. This type of minimum wage increase does disproportionately impact small businesses. I wanted to talk about another real-world example. Washington, D.C. just increased their minimum wage last year, and what happened was a massive contraction. Looking specifically at the hospitality and leisure market, they lost about 700 jobs, and looking at that a little bit further, that job loss spiked right when that minimum wage was implemented. And looking at that, my first thought was, well, perhaps this could be due to a volatile economy, but unfortunately that job loss did stop right at the city line. So there is real world impact here. I also did want to mention that Walmart, another employer looking to come into Washington, D.C. again, is scheduled to open 2 new stores, create hundreds of jobs. Unfortunately, they decided to pull out of the city. They're not going to open those stores, eliminating the potential for that job creation, and they did cite the minimum wage increase as one of the reasons why they would not be coming. So I hope you will oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. How many do we have left? Can you just identify who you are?
Madam Chair, I'll be very brief. Mike Forehand with the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, representing 700 small, medium, and large size members, businesses across Northern Virginia. We oppose the bill. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Mindy Carlin, representing the Northern Virginia Chamber of Partnership, Dulles Regional, Greater Reston, and Houghton County Chambers. We oppose the bill as well. Thanks.
Madam Chair, Katie Frazier with the Virginia Agribusiness Council. For all the reasons previously stated, we do oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Susan Seward from the Virginia Forest Products Association. We also oppose these bills. Thanks.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, my name is Wilmer Stoneman. I represent the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. We oppose the legislation simply because the minimum wage is part of a formula that requires us to pay a certain wage rate to many of our workers. And that wage rate for this year would be $10.72. It goes up nearly 4% every year, and this would, really drive it up pretty high. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've gotten everyone. Any questions from the committee at this point?
Are we at the point to be speaking to the bills?
Absolutely.
Okay. Then just at appropriate time, I'd like to speak to the bills.
It appears like it's now.
Okay. We struggle with these bills every year, and Delegate Plum, as I noted, he and I have had the same conversation now for a few years, where a lot of us want to try to find policies that improve the lives of the working poor, especially folks, there's kids involved oftentimes, and how do we direct efficient government policies to those folks? How do we both stimulate growth at the job level, drive wages higher, at the same time not trying to cost jobs? We've discussed various economist studies, the CBO study from a couple of years ago that projected up to 1 million jobs lost nationwide, raising the net pay for some at the bottom, but costing jobs. And I think everybody takes issues very seriously, and as I've said before with Delegate Plum, and I don't sit on finance, so I don't have the privilege of being a part of the discussions about the earned income tax credit. I'm actually one that's convinced the earned income tax credit is the way to go. And I realize the confirmation bias that exists in life, but I'm sure everybody who's participating in this debate read the Fed study that came out in December out of the San Francisco Fed that essentially confirmed that. And what their argument was, number one, they said every 1% of wage growth, the wage floor increases, you lose 0.1 to 0.2% of employment. That study projected that we were at 100 to 200,000 jobs lost already. With that was the fact to go forward. More importantly, they found what an inefficient way increasing minimum wage was to address poverty, because what the minimum wage does is addresses people who earn low wages, not those who live in poverty. There is a lot of overlap between those two universes, obviously, but they are in fact two different universes that overlap. So one can earn low wages but not live in poverty, because household earnings are what we use to determine poverty. Whereas the earned income tax credit actually goes at people living in poverty, not those earning low wages. And so, frankly, nothing's changed. I think in the proponents and the opponents of these bills, well-intentioned people support these and well-intentioned people oppose these. I encourage Delegate Plum and his continued efforts over in the Finance Committee. I think the San Francisco Fed, now the CBO and the Fed now coming out saying the same thing, that these cost jobs and deliver money in an inefficient way, and there's a more efficient way to do it. So I'm encouraged to hear Delegate Plum say he's attempting that other avenue. I disagree with how unhelpful my comments are, because I can guess what finance does with those bills, and I'm not over there. So I applaud your efforts there. But for those same reasons and the number, I will be one of those who continues to want to find ways to address the working poor and those living in poverty, and I don't believe the minimum wage is the right policy to drive money into those households. So, same as I've always opposed these bills, I oppose them again this year.
Am I on? Mr. Chairman, I would like to just make a few comments. We've heard a number of these bills over the years on increasing minimum wages, and I am one that support, of course, small businesses. Being from rural Virginia, that's what boosts our economy, mom and pop businesses. But I do feel these people pain when you talk about increasing the minimum wages from $7.25 to $15 an hour. How can people live that way? And we here, and none of us would want to have $7.25 an hour, or even $15 an hour. Can you imagine people who have to decide to whether they're going to buy their prescription medicines or feed their family based on a minimum wage? And personally speaking, I work with individual nurses, assistants, CNAs all the time, who make $7.25, or they make $10 an hour actually. And by the time that they pay their health care insurance to have sufficient coverage for their family, they have less than $100 to spend before the next pay period. If that's not poverty, I don't know what poverty is. And we have to begin to not only just support small business, but support the average working individual. They're not looking for a handout. They are just looking for a hand up. And pretty soon, we have to stop shoving this aside and deal with the issue at hand. So I do support the minimum wage, increasing the minimum wage.
Madam Chair,
Delegate Pillar.
move to report.
Second.
Madam Chairwoman,
Other big.
substitute motion. And I think we have the bills in a block. Has that already happened? So would a motion to lay the bills on the table in a block be appropriate?
If that's your motion, it would be.
And that would be my
Madam Chair?
substitute motion.
There's already a motion on the table, seconded.
And point of order, substitute motion to lay the bills on the table is superior motion, Madam Chairwoman.
Madam Chair,
And we have a second.
request a vote on the board.
Excuse me?
I'd like the vote to go on the board, please, Madam Chair.
We can't put on, we can call roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, that motion is not debatable. So we have a motion to put the four bills, 597, 623, 988, and 995, to lay them on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay.
Ayes and ayes. Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes.
Ayes and ayes. Good roll call, by name.
We're doing this.
Delegate Ware. Aye. Delegate Bell. Aye. Delegate Abib. Aye. Delegate Villanueva. Aye. Delegate O'Quinn. Aye. Delegate Ward.
No.
Delegate Tyler.
No.
Delegate Philicorn.
No.
Delegate Corey.
No.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Vote is 6-4 to have the bill laid on the table. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone that came to testify. We're going to move on to our next block of bills.